Tacloban City. As the only highly urbanized city in the region, it is a gateway to Eastern Visayas. 6 years of award-winning governance results in 2013 becoming the most prosperous year in Tacloban's history. The city is poised to launch a campaign in December of that year to market Tacloban as a competitive new destination for investment. But in November, the unthinkable happens.
This is probably one of the top 12, so the top dozen of all storms ever seen on this planet with the satellite or in person. That's how big this is. We will lose people no matter what you can do. This is almost at some point for some people on these islands an unsurvivable storm.
November 6. Tacloban City Disasters Council convenes all barangay chairmen for a briefing about the seriousness of the coming storm. Immediately, the barangays are mobilized to evacuate storm surge hazard zones seen in red on this map. Evacuees are assigned to one of 28 evacuation centers across the city. An industrial kitchen prepares meals, and police officers are assigned to maintain order in all evacuation centers. The city also coordinates with volunteer organizations, local universities, businesses, and media to disseminate information and to plan the response after the storm. November 7, the day before the storm, Mayor Alfred Romualdez proceeds to the airport to receive officials of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, namely its chairman Volter Gazmin, Interior Secretary Mar Rojas, and Civil Defense Chief Eduardo Del Rosario. After a short press conference at the airport, Secretary Rojas calls for an 8 p.m. meeting at the regional police headquarters. However, fire breaks out in downtown Tacloban. The mayor personally oversees the response. He makes it to the meeting as soon as the fire was put out. With Secretary Rojas presiding, government agency representatives report on the status of preparations. Unfortunately, one very critical agency is not represented.
So, is there somebody from Pag-asa here? Wala rin.
Pag-asa is the national institution that provides weather forecasts and advisories, including flood and typhoon warnings. As of this time, the forecast is that the storm will hit around noontime. Banking on this information, Secretary Rojas calls for a follow-up meeting at 8 a.m. the following day.
Until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning,
yes, sir.
Na ipalikas natin.
Yes, sir. That was my instructions to the PDC.
But the storm arrives much earlier than expected, and the 5-hour difference between the predicted and actual landfall time spelled a fatal difference. By 7 a.m., Yolanda has made landfall on the island of Leyte. Tacloban City has always been at the forefront of disaster preparedness, for it has been duly recognized by the Asian Institute of Management. On the morning of the storm, Tacloban City Mayor Alfred Romualdez receives a report that the tide in San Pedro Bay has receded over 150 meters, a phenomenon associated with incoming tsunamis. To confirm the report, he proceeds to the beachfront so he could warn the city in case the tide returns as massive waves. But they are stranded in a seaside function hall by buffeting winds. As the mayor feared, the storm surge comes very quickly, forcing his men to punch a hole in the ceiling, climb to the rafters before the biggest waves surge into the building, and hold them for their lives. Meanwhile, at the Astrodome, notice the height of the balustrade on the second level. The ocean rose close to that height. Evacuees inside scrambled to move the children to upper floors. By virtue of quality design and construction, the Astrodome did not collapse, saving the 8,000 people who sought refuge inside. Elsewhere, the tsunami-like storm surge wreaks relentless destruction, engulfing downtown Tacloban and other coastal communities. Category 5 hurricane winds tear through the region at speeds reaching 378 kilometers per hour. When the tide receded, the mayor ran 700 meters down the highway to reach his family. Their residence was on a peninsula that was completely submerged during the storm surge. His wife and daughters were scheduled to move to safer accommodations that morning. But at 6 a.m., he calls them to stay put, as strong winds have made it dangerous to be out on the street.
We were hanging on to what was left of the of the ceiling.
Yeah, yeah.
My daughters and I trying to fight because there was the water was rushing and pushing us out into the sea.
All of the mayor's vehicles were destroyed, so his family heads downtown on foot, where conditions were likely not as desperate as in their neighborhood. Along the way, his party was able to offer rescue and assistance to people with various needs. 2 kilometers down, they reach a major road junction. Secretaries Rojas and Gazmin happen to be there. The mayor gives them a report of the dire situation in the peninsula. November 9, day after the storm, the mayor with the chief of police rescues one of the bodyguards of Secretary Rojas. 2 of his other bodyguards died in the storm. Much of the roads within Tacloban have been rendered impassable with debris. The city government prioritizes cleaning the conduit from downtown Tacloban to the airport to facilitate the movement of aid. The city engineers have cleared the road halfway through. Mayor Romualdez supervises clearing the rest of the way, a task that took a grueling 9 hours. Clearing operations kept stopping to allow massive traffic of aid coming to the airport and of survivors seeking a flight out of the city. Post-storm assessment reveals damage more closely matching the tsunami hazard map. Then the storm surge map followed for preemptive evacuation. Such was the magnitude of Yolanda. Power, water and communication lines are all down. Roads are jammed with dead bodies and debris that had to be hauled in a provisional dump site. People roam the city on foot, braving the risk of waterborne disease in search of food and loved ones. Rampant looting ensued for 8 days, notably the San Miguel and Coca-Cola beverage plants, and Robinson's Mall, which was also heavily vandalized. Meanwhile, US troops and other foreign aid were waiting for the president to declare state of calamity so they can go full throttle in search, rescue, and relief operations. Malacanang took 4 days, despite the fact that 2 cabinet secretaries were in Tacloban to witness the devastation firsthand. There was no reason for such a delay. Yolanda was already known to be the strongest storm to make landfall in recorded history, even in forecasts. Sadly, an earlier declaration would have made a big difference. In Tacloban City alone, close to 2,700 dead bodies have been recovered, 500 of which were children. The National Bureau of Investigation is now helping the city identify the dead through DNA reconciliation using Interpol protocols.